whole experience changed my creative.
Do you think you'll do any more? Or
well, actually, all that work
or maybe it gets incorporated somewhere. But
all that work just came back. Well, not just, but it came back at the end of last year here to the studio, and I haven't had a chance to actually work with it because the idea is mixing that material with what I do, which is the thread. So.
Okay.
It's for sure coming out, and
right. I don't think I ever saw the finished pieces, but I'd seen you speak about what you were trying to do, and kind of taking some inspiration from like the Bernini's Rape of Persephone, and like that whole constricting something that is almost like tying bands around a balloon, that constriction, but like,
which goes back to the idea in the End of Childhood series, this idea of something restraining you and modifying something,
right?
Which it also ties with the game theory stuff. A rule is gonna modify a behavior or like a pattern of behavior, and I was making these copper cages that were constricting the way they were blowing into so it made this amorphous.
So were those copper cages they were able to take away once it like expanded, or are they part of the finished piece?
Down, they can be taken off. And then it's going to sort of be replaced with thread.
Wow.
And I think in some of them I'm actually going to leave it because I think it kind of looks. It's charged, right? Charred. It's black basically, but you can polish it off.
Sure.
I'm excited about those pieces.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a totally different open door that you can go through.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
It sounds really, because I mean, I think of some of those, some of the things you can do with glass, especially. The artist is slipping my mind now, but a show last year down at the Nasher, there were these, like 3,000 pound
Ronnie Horn.
Oh, right?
It's just amazing,
right? And Larry Bell, and those sorts of when you start thinking large scale or even just small scale, I mean, things you can do with glass and things like that, or but I don't know. I've been to one workshop for 3 hours and I loved it, but I couldn't figure. It's like golf. It's like how do people afford to? How do people afford? I was like, wow, this is awesome. I feel like I would have to be an apprentice in here to be able to.
Well, and I think that's how it works, because it's also, I mean, it's a team sport, right? Because you can't do it by yourself.
No.
I mean, unless you're doing what they call flame work, which is a small work. Mm-hmm. Which is what my neighbors do, actually.
I remember. I've seen some. There was like a documentary I saw on deviant art where there were people that would do the flame work to make, glass pipes that would illegal in many places, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a kid, there would be a guy, that would set up, at the little street fairs and would use a flame torch to stretch bottlenecks. And things like that.
Yeah. Right? But I mean, being in the shop, it really feels like being in an alchemical. I was going to say studio. It's not a studio, but like a chemical laboratory.
Right.
And I mean, in a sense, the process hasn't changed in thousands of years. It's literally the same process they're still using today. I mean, the ovens might be newer and like the way, but the actual process of doing it is actually pretty much the same.
Right.
And yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, it's really exciting. I totally see myself working again in glass again.
I guess the one last thing I have for you is, Plexus 34. I know I keep coming back to because I guess it's the one that's most local to here.
Yeah.
But I've gone back over to the Amon Carter several times since you've installed it, and every time I go into that space, it's not my first time to see it, but I see other people enter that space for the first time, and they're just captivated.
Yeah.
And even me, having seen it 3 or 4 times before, and I think it says something about your work, but it's also about that particular one. I mean, because the scale of it is so enormous. But people, so often, you go into a museum, and a person will come up to a painting, and they may give it 10 seconds. 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And I stood there and saw people that were spending 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Because the piece is so different from so many angles. And there's sort of an, you talk about it being ethereal, and, it's, but the piece, there's, as you move, there's almost like this animation that takes place in how the threads interact where they cross over, and so it's like it's hard for photos to do that justice.
Yeah,
and it's
even video.
Yeah, and but I really have to give you kudos for making something that people really engage with, right?
Yeah,
and honestly, that. I just feel like it's going to be hard for them to take that piece out of that space.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to have any say in the matter.
Yeah.
But, when you think about it, I mean, that it's almost, a job well done to you for creating something that feels like it was intended for the space. And, you think about it, I mean, Philip Johnson, it's almost something that I think he would have appreciated anyway. You think of like his chapel in Thanksgiving Square.
Yeah.
He's using that spectrum of color.
Yeah.
In a spiral there. In the stained glass, and I mean it's just so well suited. But so I don't know if there's a question there, but
Well, I think that's one of the things I'm the most proud of is the fact that people actually spend time with my pieces. I think that really is the sign that the pieces are successful and they're doing something right. In a way, one of the reasons I keep doing them is just because I just love people's reactions to the pieces, and it's just amazing to see. It's almost like seeing like their masks drop, and it just goes, I don't know, just to another place that it just disarms them. Right. It disarms people. Yeah, no, I like.
And I mean, I know you don't. I feel like you try to keep a healthy distance from the word rainbow, but it's.
I do,
but I mean, I feel like it's a similar sort of. I see people having a similar sort of response, as to seeing a rainbow.
Yeah.
Like, it's like this anomaly. It's passing its, there's like some sort of, deep-seated reaction that we have to seeing something like that.
Yeah.
And maybe maybe it's reminding, it's reminiscent of a rainbow, or something. It's
well, and I mean, one of the reasons I don't like using the word rainbow is because I'm not trying to recreate nature,
right?
So I'm not trying to make rainbows, but I do like using the full spectrum because the pieces do look like light,
right?
So just to reinforce that idea of light, I use like the full spectrum,
sure,
which is also a rainbow. But I'm an artist, so I take liberties, and so I'm not trying to recreate rainbows. I'm not trying to. I can't get away from the word because, I mean, any article that comes out non-invariably puts rainbow in their headline, but so I mean, I've sort of come to terms with that to an extent, but I just find it so funny whenever, every once in a while, a photo of my work ends up in Reddit. And the comments are just so funny because they're always commenting. And it's only the people of Reddit. I don't know why the people of Reddit, but they're only like, oh, but that's not the real rainbow. That doesn't, like, because sometimes I start with yellow and end with yellow. Right. So, because this full spectrum is a circle. Right. So I just, anyway. And I just find it so funny that they're like, oh, but that's not a real rainbow.
All right, we need to figure out a way to say, a spectrum of colors, or But it's I mean, I can look at the one that is here in your studio, and it's obviously not using those.
Right, and I mean this. I started. A few years ago, I started thinking about the idea of how to disrupt the rainbow, the spectrum,
right?
In a way that is still harmonious,
right?
So this is sort of one of the solutions that I came up with, which is sort of alternating.
It's sort of like alternating analogous colors, or something, or
well, basically, it came about. So I took two spectrums, shifted one of them, and I sort of meshed them together.
Got it. So it's sort of they alternate.
They alternate. Exactly. And I think the past year and a half or so, like all my installations, or most of my installations, have been this striped type of color solution. And even the piece at Conduit last year was doing the same thing, but with grayscale.
Sure. And by the time it gets to, I don't know if you have a term for the axis in the middle, whether that's, whatever point that is. But by the time it gets there, it is creating this beautiful neutral that is, really hard to, I also teach art history, and I was just talking today with kids about, the Impressionist use of optical mixing.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're, I was talking to them about Seurat, and, there are a lot of, a lot of that is going on there in the middle, right? And so that's, your work's beautiful, and I there's just, I just feel like you can do as much work as you want to do for a long time, because like there's just so you've opened up so many different avenues.
Yeah.
Of how you could pursue this.
And,
you know.
You know,